Welcome to your College-Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Dave. I'm a parent of a daughter in college, and we live in Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. We've got 5 or 6 updates in higher ed, and we'll share them with you today, and we'll dive into our preview for our interview, which I know you guys are excited to get to. So the first thing I want to share with you has to do with a decision the Biden administration has made to start publishing low-performing programs. Now, those of you who follow higher ed may remember, does that sound familiar? Yes. The Obama administration had made this commitment. We're going to publish low-performing programs. Now, when the Biden administration said they were going to do it, they said their focus would be on for-profits. The Biden administration is developing a watch list. It's going to go beyond just for-profits. Now, you may remember that this was quite controversial because it's very difficult to rate a college and university. Everybody knows you need to do it, but boy, you want to stir up a controversy. So try having a debate on how you do it. The example I'd like to give is, let's say I'm an SAT tutor and you take 2 students. And let's say one is got some mental impairments and some physical challenges. Well, can you really compare my score gain with that student to somebody who comes from privilege? Very difficult to do. And that's oftentimes what you're finding is, how do you compare students from very different socioeconomic situations? But that doesn't mean you can't do it. And so there's determination that this is going to happen. And it's going to be a list of programs that offer low financial value to students and taxpayers. But meanwhile, they're still wrestling with trying to form a consensus of how to do it. And they've asked for reports and feedback from some researchers by February 10th. And then they're going to seek to develop the measures and metrics to build this list. And certainly we will be back and explain a lot more once it is released. But know that this rating idea is coming. Those of you who really know the history, you may remember that this project by the Obama administration, where they're actually going to create rankings, to so much blowback, they backed down on it. But it is eventually what led to the formation of the scorecard. The college scorecard came out of this initial project. Here's a quote from Amy Ellen Duke Benfield. She's the managing director of policy and research at Higher Learning Advocates, which is a bipartisan nonprofit group that works to improve outcomes for all students. And she says this: the federal government is lagging behind state leaders who have already begun talking about how to define a high-quality post-secondary program. So look for a much more nuanced approach to develop and to emerge, and we'll come back and let you know. All right, not surprisingly, DeSantis strikes again. I think you'd have to be on another planet to know that DeSantis has been fear-mongering and stirring up backlash, mostly against Black and brown people and internationals, to increase his political power. And he's done it again twice this week. So the presidents of Florida's 28 state and community colleges made a statement on Wednesday. They said they would eliminate and identify by February 1st any academic requirement or program that compels a belief in race theory or related concepts, including intersectionality. Wow. So this comes because a request came from the office of the governor, Ron DeSantis, for all public colleges and universities to submit a comprehensive list showing all of their diversity initiatives and anything related to critical race theory. And so they're literally saying they're going to ban them. In fact, there is an article that I highly encourage you to read if you're interested in this. And we may or may not discuss it sometime on the podcast, but it's by Eric Kelderman. It came out just this week, January 20th, in the Chronicle for Higher Ed, and it's called The Plan to Dismantle DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives. So that's the first thing he did. And then he struck again. And we kind of knew this was coming. I'm going to go back. This summer, when I was at the College Board Conference, I attended a 30-minute presentation by the president about a new course they were studying and about to release, an AP course on African American studies. And it grew applause from the crowd. And they talked about the rigor because they knew that it would be criticized. And sure enough, here it is. So here's the statement. The Florida Department of Education has said that public schools in the state, check this out, they cannot offer the new advanced placement course. So they're banning public schools from offering the new advanced placement course on African American studies. And the Miami Herald reported this. And here's a quote from Ron DeSantis. The course lacks educational value. In the future, should the College Board be willing to come back to the table with lawful, historically accurate content, the Florida Department of Education will always be willing to reopen the discussion. Like he's really studied the curriculum. You know, come on, give me a break. And I know it sounds like I'm editorializing today, and I'm sure some people think that I'm mixing politics with education, but I'm sorry, I'm calling balls and strikes. It's just a fact that race has imbued every aspect of American history, and you cannot just remove it from the textbooks. So I'm going to call balls and strikes, and I'm never going to shy away from telling the truth and speaking truth to power. So the College Board released this statement to Inside Higher Ed. It's like all new AP courses, AP African American Studies is undergoing a rigorous multi-year pilot phase, collecting feedback from teachers, students, and scholars and policymakers. The process of piloting and revising course frameworks is a standard part of any AP course. So when I was at the College Board Conference, the educational leaders stood up and said, these are senior people, that we plan on offering AP credit for this course because we know the backlash that is ensuing. And yeah, I've seen it play out immediately with saying our state will not offer the course. So there you go. All right, moving on to a different topic. Harvard Med School's dean announced on Tuesday that the institution would no longer send data to U.S. News and World Report. Wow, this is big. So we saw it with the law schools. And by the way, 24 law schools now have joined and said they will not do it. 24. But here's a quote from Harvard Medical School's dean that summarizes why the rankings, U.S. News rankings, are so fallacious. I mean, this is really succinctly put, and I love this. Listen to this. As unintended consequences, rankings create perverse incentives for institutions to report misleading or inaccurate data. I don't think the public has any idea how much inaccurate and misleading data gets presented. Okay, it creates perverse incentives to set policies to boost rankings rather than more noble objectives, or to divert financial aid from students with financial need to high-scoring students who have means in order to maximize ranking criteria. That is well written. And that's by George Q. Daly. And once again, Yale has consistently been the top law school in the rankings. So when they first took the initiative and made this decision, it was a powerful statement. You can't accuse them of sour grapes. They're leader of the pack. Well, U.S. News actually has two different rankings for medical schools. And Harvard is currently ranked number 1 on the best medical schools for research list. They also have another one for best medical schools for primary care where they came in 9th. But best medical schools for research, Harvard's number 1, taking a bold stance. So stay tuned because, well, Dave and I are going to talk about this more coming up. So I'll stop that for now and move on to my next point. Okay. Columbia names its first female president. Columbia University. This happened January 18th. And it's Nemat Shafik. I'm sorry, butchering this name. Nemat Shafik an economist and president of the London School of Economics and Political Science. So this is significant. And I know some people are like, oh, really? Like the first female president? So at some point, we probably should go into a lot more about the history of when the Ivy League went co-ed and all that was involved in that. But I'll just share this really succinctly. The main reason why it occurred was not out of gender equity. It was not out of egalitarianism. It was not out of fairness. It was not out of a profound desire to educate women. It was because other competitor non-Ivy schools had gone co-ed, and the Ivies were losing men to other schools that had gone co-ed. So that's just some interesting background. Here's another piece of information you may not know. Of the 8 Ivy League schools, 7 of them went co-ed in the 60s and the 70s. There was one holdout until the 80s, or the last holdout, and that was Columbia. They did not admit women until 1983. 1983. Dave and I were in college in 1983. All right? Columbia was still all male in 1983. Wow. And I'll have more to say about that, too. I want to come back. I've got a nice big number related to this. So it's a pretty significant statement. Now, in fairness to Columbia, you've got Barnard right across the street, and they did it against great backlash from Barnard, who did not want them to start admitting women. You can understand. All right. I have to regretfully share this story. Yale softens its mental health policy for students. I'm not regretting that part of it. This is a good thing. I'm regretting it because Lisa and I had a debate. Then I had to come back and do something I don't like doing, which is eat humble pie and admit I was wrong. And then, how do I know about this story? Because Lisa forwarded it to me with one word in the text. Ha! H-A. Ha! Nothing's worse than eating crow and then have someone say, I told you so. Anyway, good for Yale. Here's a blurb from the article. This by Susan Greenberg, came out January 20, 2023. Yale University has made major changes to its medical leave policy that will allow students struggling with mental health problems to take time off rather than withdraw and return to campus when they're ready without having to reapply. The article really came out in the Washington Post. That's where you can really read it. That's just a summary of it. Yale had come under fire in recent months for students suffering from psychological distress had described as callous treatment. Students and alumni had sued them last fall, alleging Yale officials pressured students experiencing suicide ideation to withdraw or risk being kicked out. They also had to reapply to be allowed to resume their studies. So the policy was deemed cruel and unfair and inhumane, and Yale has reversed the policy and is going to support the students more so they can continue to get their health care and get the support. So we're always going to be supportive of that. It's just, I don't like getting ha posts from Lisa when I already had to admit I was wrong, but it's all good.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, hopefully you've enjoyed our interview with Hillary Dickman. It was one of my funnest ones I did. And by the way, I have to apologize. You'll notice my sound quality is egregious and atrocious. Our regular listeners may know I took a week, went to an Airbnb in Charlotte over Thanksgiving, which is when Hillary and I recorded this, so I wasn't in my acoustically good room, and it really shows up in the sound. But I think the content's so good that it actually overpowers the sound. And I give Hillary credit for this. She reached out to me and said, Mark, I listened to every podcast. I don't think you guys have talked about FERPA enough. And I knew right away she was right. So that's what we'll be talking about. It's a longer interview. We go about 40 minutes talking about FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. What is FERPA? How does it relate to your student? Listen and enjoy. Okay, Hillary, this is an important topic, and this is when you reached out to me, and I so appreciate Hillary because she listens to every episode, so I can get immediate feedback from her from an admissions lens. And she reached out to me maybe, 3 or 4 months ago and said, the one thing I haven't heard that much conversation about is FERPA. And I know that that's true. Now, we had Marichal Gentry. So Marichal Gentry, he brought up FERPA as one of the 10 most important points that parents need to know about in transition. But it was great, but it was maybe like 3 minutes. And so let's talk about FERPA. I know two of my students I worked with last year both reached out to me to tell me about their admission ratings. And they had gone through the process of requesting to see their application. And so and they told me what their ratings were. And I was actually surprised it was more detailed than I thought it was going to be. But why don't you talk about how all that works, how that relates to FERPA, and anything else? Take it where you want to go with it, Hillary.
Yeah, so why don't I start by telling listeners what FERPA is?
Sure,
so FERPA was created in 1974. It's a federal law that gives parents the right to have access to their children's educational records and the right to have your child's records amended and to have some control over the disclosure of personally identifiable information from your educational records. And when your child turns 18 or when they enroll in a post-secondary educational institution at any age, those rights transfer from you as the parent to the student. So as a parent, you no longer have the right to access your student's educational records at their college, but your student does. And one of the things that's included in your student's educational record once they enroll at a college is their admission file. So this came up for me because I had a student from my territory who I had gotten to know well, who was admitted to CC and enrolled, who asked to see her admission file. And I was not really very familiar with FERPA at that point. And I was like, I can look back at your file and see that you waived your FERPA rights, so I don't think you get to see your file, and I'm not sure what to do about this. But when you waive your FERPA rights, when you're going through the Common App and you check that box that says, yes, I waive my FERPA rights, that is really just to your recommendations, right? And so we appreciate it when students waive their FERPA rights because then we know that the recommender feels comfortable writing whatever they want to write. And recommenders, by and large, write positive things, but they feel more freedom to say it however they want to say it when you've waived your FERPA rights. So I think that's
I want to stop you for
part.
a sec on that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure people don't miss that. So just know colleges expect you to check that box. Otherwise, I know we had something similar when I did admissions, and we didn't trust any recommendation.
Yeah.
That if the student or the parent had seen it.
Right.
It was just we're like, no way. The teacher's going to be completely guarded, and how they're going to be completely transparent. And so it was just discredited. So I just wanted to make sure people caught that.
Yeah, it's not a good look to not waive your FERPA rights. So you waive your FERPA rights, but that really is only meaningful for your recommendations and your counselor recommendation, right? So the rest of the file belongs to you. So when this student came and asked me to see her file, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, I had to go ask for help and figure out what does this really mean. And so what I learned in talking with like our VP and our director about this was that back around, I think it was 2015, and of course this happened at Stanford because Stanford students are Stanford students, they figured out that they, because of FERPA, could look at their application files. And so they all started requesting to see their files. This is written up in the Stanford Daily if you want to look at it. It's a pretty interesting article. Actually, I'll send you the link, Mark. So these students all asked to see their admission files. There were so many of them asking to see their admission files that Stanford actually had to set up a call center to field all the requests from their students. And then the college, in this case it was Stanford, has 45 days to fulfill the FERPA request. So to say to the student, okay, yes, you can come in and look at your file. We will sit down and go through it with you. At least that's how we do it at CC. That's my interpretation of what most colleges do.
Yeah, that's my understanding, the 45-day rule.
Yeah, you don't walk away with like a folder of paper that you can take with you and study at home. You look at it in the admission office. And And it was overwhelming for Stanford when this first happened. And then other students at other colleges started realizing that they could ask for their admission file. And like, we don't have enough staff to be sitting around sharing students' admission files with them. And I think most colleges don't either. And so, what most colleges do now is over the summer, after you're admitted to college, once we know that we have everything we need from your file, we purge most of the record. So all that's really left in your admission file now, because it's no longer 2015 and we've wisened up to students asking for their to see their admission record, all that's really left is your Common App and your transcript, the essay that you wrote, right? Everything that you turned in to us is there. And then there are some numeric ratings that are still attached to your file, but we purge all of the comments that are made by readers as we're reading your file. So if you were to sit down and look at your file without someone from the admission staff there to help you figure it out, you would see some numbers and you would have no context for what those numbers mean. So it wouldn't probably mean much of anything to you. So I've, since that first student, had some more students come and ask me if they can see their files. And I've told them, yeah, you can see your files, but like, it's going to be pretty disappointing because you're expecting to see, a critique of you as an applicant. And all that's really going to be there is what you turned into us. And then some numbers that don't mean anything to you because you have never read a file using our rating system. So that's how we do it at CC. I think one of the interesting questions that the Stanford Dean of Admissions asked students as they were asking to see their files was, what benefit are you seeking from looking at your admission record? And is your life going to be better from having reviewed it? Like, what is it that you're looking for? We don't make mistakes when we admit students. We admitted you because you deserve to be here. And what more is it that you need to know? What are you looking for? And then I've also read some advice from people in the admissions field saying, if you were to read it and if there were comments on it that were critical, what would that do to you? How would that make you feel? And how would that change your relationship with the institution? Would you now feel that you don't belong here? Would you be mad about it? Would you feel hurt? But remember, when we are reading files, we say glowing things and we say critical things like, wow, it doesn't look like this student took as much rigor as was available to them. Were they really going after all of the learning that was available to them? If that's going to hurt your feelings, then you might not want to look at your file. At CC, that won't happen because we purge comments. But it sounds like from our conversation that we had earlier, Mark, that's not true of all colleges.
Yeah. I mean, some of my students are getting some juicy nuggets there. And one I'm actually thinking of seeing if she'll come on here because I think it might be interesting for our listeners to hear what she learned from that experience. And it's interesting because I didn't know about this article. I really want to read this article that you said.
Yeah.
One of my students was at Stanford and one was at Michigan. And the interesting thing about both of them is the sense that I got is everybody's doing this. And so it completely makes sense what you said about Stanford. It looks like that's the culture. And I think with Michigan, it just becomes one of these things where you go do it with your friend kind of thing. But I can definitely tell that different schools have a different lens of how restrictive they are at what they purge. Just having seen a few different things, right? But that numerical rating tends to be there. The other thing I would say, Hillary, is I hear the case you're making for, do you want to go see this? You may feel imposter syndrome. I think that's not how a lot of people think. Like, I know for a fact if I learned about this, I would have been in there so fast because I just would have been curious. And I think a lot of people will be curious.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with students at highly selective colleges is that they have this sort of perfectionist streak that runs through them, right? And they always want more feedback. I was just having a conversation.
Try editing their essays.
Yeah. I was just having a conversation like this with my older daughter yesterday about like, my professor didn't leave any comments on my essay. So how am I supposed to know what to do better next time? And like, maybe you should just write the next essay and not worry about it. I don't know. But when you get these students who have this perfectionist tendency, or who are already feeling imposter syndrome, especially if you've been admitted to a place like Stanford, I would imagine that most people feel some sense of imposter syndrome when they get there, and they want to know, like, how did I get in, and who supported me, and who saw something in me, and did they see something in me that I don't even know about myself yet? And it's like this opportunity for self-actualization, right? When actually, like, it's probably not. It's probably not as groundbreaking as you think it's going to be.
And I'm probably a little jaded because I'm literally working up just 2 kids this year that have done this. And they both saw it as it was a positive experience for them. So if I would have even had one that would have sort of been, recoiled, or not even recoiled, just winced and just didn't like something, I probably would change. Because it was in the context of, I really want to share some exciting news. Blah, 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 you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Plus, I know me, and I'm that curious person who would do it. So when I think of that, I can see how we're not trying to create a mad rush on the admission office by doing this over here. That's not the purpose.
No.
But I do think, there's some other aspects of FERPA we should probably talk about as well. And, as it relates to, do you want to talk about, Hillary, like things that parents can't see without students giving permission? Like students can create other sign-off forms for parents to have access to things. Otherwise, schools literally legally cannot share things.
Right, like grades, right?
Yes.
And lots of parents will say, but I'm paying the tuition. Why can't I see the grades? And I remember having this experience when I was in college with my parents, when I feel like, I don't know if there were just some holes in our system at Miami, or if something changed with FERPA in the mid 90s while I was there. But I remember going from my parents being able to see my grades to suddenly my grades were not being mailed home to them anymore. And they were saying, what happened? How come we're not seeing your grades anymore? And they trusted me to be getting good grades, so they weren't worried about it. But there are for sure parents out there who are frustrated that they don't have access to their students' grades. And especially if you're coming from one of the schools where you have constant access, right? Where you can see every grade that a teacher puts in a grade book in high school, and you can be sitting at home and log into your student's Infinite Campus and see their grades change, like as the instructor puts grades into the grade book. That is not the experience in college. And if you want access to your students' grades, then they have to sign off on it. And they can do that in their student portal on the website at their institution. They can give you access to their grades. But it's, I think, a little disconcerting for parents who feel like, but I'm footing the bill for this education. So I want to know how my student is doing.
Yeah, and you can easily do what we did, which was say, if we're going to pay, then you're going to give us access. And we weren't like checking 24/7, but I was one of those parents that I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not just going to pay and I have no access to your grades. And I don't apologize for that. I also don't encourage overly obsessive conduct either. And you're checking 24/7 and you're following up every little time there's some aspect of imperfection. I think there's a balance there. But I do not have any problem with a parent saying that if I'm going to contribute, you're not going to withhold grades, grades from us as well.
And I think most schools only will give you semester grades anyway, right? Like, isn't that all that's available in their portal? So that's where it's very different from lots of high schools who have in the last decade made up to the minute grades available. Like, that's not a thing in college. But also you are going to have to ask permission from your kiddo to be able to see their grades. And I think it makes perfect sense for students to share. And also it makes sense for students who have a not great relationship with their parents, whose parents aren't paying for them to go to college, to be able to keep those to themselves if they want to. So I appreciate that side of it too.
And what about like the financial stuff?
Yeah, I think that your student has to give you permission for that too. Do you know?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Yeah, that has been my experience.
Yes.
I think that's part of it. I think one of the really interesting things about FERPA that I hadn't thought about before is more on the side of like that your professors can't release information about you without your permission. So for example, I read an article about a student who was applying for their teacher's license, and someone in the department had overheard a story about this student that was not positive. And the person went and told the state teacher licensing board this story about the student. And that broke FERPA, right? Like that, you're not allowed to release information about a student without that student's permission. And so that university actually ended up getting sued by the student because they released information without their permission. So I think that I had only thought about FERPA and the parent-student relationship or the admissions-student relationship before. I hadn't thought about it from the perspective of protecting a student as they're trying to go get a job, which I think is an interesting kind of aspect of it.
FERPA's pretty broad. It includes financial information, it includes dorm life information, student activities information, and any disciplinary actions. Right now, I'd like to read a quote from an excellent article by Naomi Menino entitled, "What is FERPA and how does it impact guardians and college students?" If your student is still considered a dependent for tax purposes, which is possible up to age 24, then you can formally request access to some of their education records. The college may also disclose some information to students' parents in very specific cases, such as if there is an imminent danger of harm to self or harm to others, or if a student under the age of 21 violates a university policy, such as underage drinking or drug use. With your student's permission, the college may publish directory information on its website or other printed materials which could contain their name, their photo, their email address, enrollment status, year of graduation, major of study, and athletic statistics including height and weight if applicable. Any other just admission advice or anything like that that you think parents should know that they don't know? Anything come to mind on any topic?
Yeah. Okay, so this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's sort of, as you say, Mark, grinds my gears. I want to hear from students.
Yeah.
I don't want to pick up the phone and have it be a parent calling unless it's a financial aid question. If it's a financial aid question, I am happy to talk to parents. But one of the best things that I think we can do for our students through this process is to teach them how to interact with adults and give them the opportunities to learn how to advocate for themselves. And so when I get calls from parents asking about due dates or asking about requirements for admission or anything about the application, I just see it as a lost opportunity. And I don't usually remember what parent it was calling about what student, unless there are a few cases when a parent has called too many times and then you can't forget.
Sure.
And we try not to let that reflect on the student, right? Because the student is a separate person. But man, have they missed out on an opportunity to learn how to navigate a challenging process. And this admission journey is such a neat opportunity for students to learn how to be adults and what it takes to be an adult and to make mistakes in a relatively low stakes environment, right? Because what matters in the end is the application that they send in, but their communication with us is an opportunity to learn how to write a professional email and to learn how to behave as an adult on the phone and how to ask good questions. And so I want to hear from your students.
What are the most common areas where parents cross that line in, like the most common topics or subjects or, like if you were to think of the various times when parents have done something that I wish the student did that. What comes to mind?
Yeah. So sometimes it's about what a student should put in their activities list. I would like to have that conversation with the student because I would like for them to have the opportunity to tell me what's really important to them. I don't want to know which activities are important to the parent.
Sure.
And so that can help me counsel the student on what to put in their activities list and what order to put it in and all of that. When students need to know whether or not to submit test scores, I like to talk with them about it. I had a conversation with a parent who I know is a very, very busy person and does not have time to be calling me about their students' test scores. And when I got that phone call, I was like, how do you have time to be talking to me about this? And why isn't your student calling me?
Right.
And part of that also is that I want to hear from the student about it, because if there's test anxiety or if there's frustration with testing and the parent is the one who's pushing them to test and pushing them to submit scores, I want to talk to the student about it, because I want the student to have the best possible experience with testing and submitting scores if they need to be submitting scores, rather than the parent telling them what to do. So test scores for sure, I would rather talk with students. I mean, really all parts of the application are things that I want to talk with students about. And then occasionally I get the call about financial aid, and that's a perfect opportunity to talk with parents. That is a burden
Sure.
for students to have to deal with financial aid, and I want them to be able to save that until they're already in to college. If there's a way for them to not have to think about financial aid while they're going through the application process, like, I would like to just save that for parents. And sometimes the interesting part is that a conversation will start out about financial aid, and then the parent will ask me other questions that sort of lead into the application. And I get that they're curious, but like, I want to have those conversations with students.
Awesome. That is so good. Well, you know how our podcast works. You know it's lightning round hot seat time.
Oh no.
You didn't think about that. All right. So let's start out with an easy one. Your favorite sport?
Mark, that used to be a really easy one.
Not anymore.
Well, I don't have time for sports anymore. I'm gonna say broom ball.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
so
That's a first.
I played
What-
so much broom ball in college. Anyone who knows Miami University knows that intramural broom ball is like the most fun thing going on
You
campus.
know you're going to need to explain to everybody what broom ball is now, right?
Okay, so broom ball is a little bit like hockey, but it happens on a smaller rink. And you don't wear skates, you wear shoes. And then you have like a ball that's slightly bigger than a tennis ball, and you hit it with like a paddle on the end of a stick. And it's super fun. If I played it now at my age, I'm sure that I wouldn't be able to walk for a few days afterwards, because it's also really hard on your body. But oh my goodness, like my time with my co-rec broomball team and my women's broomball team playing at 11:30 at night were like some of the most fun times that I had in college.
Sounds like something they would do at CC. Bring
We
broom
do
ball?
have-
Oh, you do?
We do
Okay.
have broom
There you
ball
go.
at CC.
Yeah,
Yep. I think
cool.
there are a lot of hockey schools have
Yes.
broom ball as sort of a side. I also learned to play hockey when I was at Miami. I came from California, so hockey was not a thing for me, but I learned to play hockey there, but broom ball was my favorite.
Well, listeners may not know this, but it's the one Division I sport that you have there.
It
right?
is.
It's hockey.
Well,
You
and
get
women's
that nice
soccer.
rink. Oh, women's soccer.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
men's
That's right.
hockey, we have a beautiful
Yeah.
new ice rink
Yeah.
that was a partnership with the city of Colorado Springs. And then, yeah, women's soccer are only two D1 sports. The rest are all D3.
Awesome. You could go to any concert, free ticket. Who are you going to see?
I mean, right now, how could I say anything but Taylor Swift?
That's like dominating the news.
I know. Actually, and that's for my daughters, right? They both love Taylor Swift. My older daughter's already been to a Taylor Swift concert. My younger one has not. But my younger daughter and I really love this Spanish artist named Alvaro Soler. And we both listen to him all the time. He's so fun. He's pretty popular in Europe, but I don't know very many Americans who listen to him. And I think that one of his concerts would be really fun to go to.
I'm going to weave an admissions question in here. What's your favorite experience you've had when traveling on the road in admissions?
I think so. New Jersey is not in my territory, but last year, because our New Jersey rep couldn't go to some college fairs, the Princeton area college fairs in New Jersey, I got to go to that event. And the other college reps and I who are in the B's, C's, and D's of the alphabet were all sitting next to each other for like 4 days straight at college fairs.
Yeah.
And
Your
I
college
had
fair friends.
Oh my gosh. I think what made it hard was knowing like this isn't my territory and I'm not going to get to hang out with these
Let me
people
just,
again.
in case people miss this. So a lot of times when you go to college fairs, they arrange you by the name of your school, and that's the order. Alphabetically. So that's what I was referring to. So I became friends with all my W friends all the time, and you're seeing them a lot. You're seeing them. You might see them like 4 or 5 days out of a week. So yes, you had a good time with your.
Those were
BC
my favorites.
buddies.
I mean, I've been to other. So Colorado is in my territory, so I do a lot of Colorado fairs, and I see the same people at most of those. And then Boston is in my territory, so I see a lot of the same people at those fairs. But for some reason, maybe it was knowing that I wasn't going to see these people again. But also that particular group was like very open to getting to know me. And listen, they're all like 25 years old and I'm 45. And so like
they could be your kid.
Yes, but they would hang out with me and like they were so fun.
That means you're cool. You're cool 45.
I didn't feel very cool when I hugged one of them on the last day. But like he felt like my best friend and I didn't want to have to leave. So it makes me want to have New Jersey in my territory just so I can be with those folks again.
That's awesome. I love it. That is great. What's a book that you think every parent should read?
Oh, it's called The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way. And it's by Amanda Ripley. And this is a book that was recommended to my husband by a coworker probably 10 years ago. And it compares students from, I think it was South Korea, Poland, and Finland. And it compares their education systems to ours in the US and talks a lot about love of learning, about focusing on education instead of sports, on making sure that kids have enough time to have fun during the school day, to sort of burn off steam. It really changed how we looked at education. And shortly after we read that, we had the opportunity to choose whether to send our kids to a typical public high school or to a charter school that did things sort of differently, where sports was not the central focus of the day, where all kids were going to take the same classes throughout their time in high school, going all the way up to Calc 3. Like, it was things that I would not have thought my child was capable of until I read this book and saw that kids all over the world are learning in the same way as the school that we were looking at. And it gave me confidence to sort of reject some of the traditional American way of learning, where we focus on grades and on extracurriculars, and instead to focus on the love and joy of learning. And wow, like it was revolutionary for the way that we thought about learning.
Wow, that is so good that I'm going to make that our recommended resource for this episode.
Awesome.
That is like pretty profound. It caused you to switch schools and everything. And I've not read it.
I can say with a lot of confidence that my kids are very different kids because of that book. They are still the same, like, smart kids who they would have been, but they have interests now that are like deep interest in learning that they wouldn't have had if we had taken a different route.
Well, I have one Audible credit left, and I know where it's going to. I hope it's on Audible.
I hope so too.
Someone's coming to Colorado Springs, and they're going to hang out there for a while. They're going to make a trip out of it. Where do you recommend they eat, and what's one fun thing they should do in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so I have to take a lot of college counselors out for meals when they're in Colorado Springs, because that's sort of part of my job. And one place that I've taken people to a lot lately is called Homa. And it is a restaurant and bar that's in a hotel called Kinship Landing. And They've got a beautiful outdoor space. It's a very boutique kind of feel. You can go out and eat in their greenhouse that has just plants everywhere. So even in the middle of cold Colorado winter, you have this beautiful space to eat in. They've got oat milk lattes on tap. They have lots of great drinks. They've got hand pies, which I think are like a northern Midwestern kind of thing, but it's like a pot pie, but in your hand. And just really good, like different kinds of foods. And the staff there are so welcoming. The hospitality is incredible. So it's a great place to visit. And it's also a hotel. And they have really fun and interesting, like it's a very millennial place. It's millennials who run it. And you can feel that millennial vibe when you're there. And the hospitality is fun. The design is beautiful. And the food is really good. So
You
you
just
can't
made
go
me
wrong.
very hungry. And right after this, here with Karis, Joy, and all of us, we're all going to Bonefish right after this.
Ooh, fun.
So yeah, that was good. And I have
That's
to recommend, because, I was with you guys in July and I got to go out with counselors and you were overseas. I missed you.
Yeah, it was fun.
But you guys took us to this food court. You know that? You know what?
Yes, Kawadi.
Yes. So I have to throw in. It was very nice. So I have a second recommendation. I don't know.
Kawadi's a fun place. It's kind of a food hall, but with a club kind of vibe, and you can get anything from Korean food to gourmet paletas, which are Mexican popsicles, and really interesting drinks there. And it feels like it's another place where it feels like it's a younger crowd.
Definitely.
But
but the food
you
is
just
good
got
no
to
matter what
stand your
age you are.
ground. Yes. Yeah, that south side of Colorado Springs has really developed nicely. It's a really great area.
Awesome. Last question. Best advice for college counselors, students, and parents.
Yeah. Okay. So my best advice for college counselors is to give us the benefit of the doubt on this side of the desk. I know it feels adversarial sometimes and like we are missing something or like we don't have your student's best interests at heart. And man, I promise that we do, and that we, even though we haven't usually had the chance to meet your students, we love what we're learning about them. And wow, do we appreciate the work that you're putting in to guiding them to us. What an incredible privilege it is, I know, for you guys to do that work, but then for us to be on the receiving end of it. So just give us the benefit of the doubt and ask us questions, and we are happy to explain how and why we do things the way that we do them.
So Hillary is referring to, and I know this because I'd get it when I was on the admission side, that sometimes you have conversations where the counselor can imply, like, how could you not have taken this kid, as if you are not sort of showing a school respect or showing the kid respect, or you don't get it. And it's really hard because they don't see the pool. You see the pool, or you know what the institutional needs were. They don't know. And sometimes those conversations can get really difficult. I feel really sorry for a guy named Harry. I don't know if he's still at Yale, but I liked him, but nobody in our region did, because they were like, nobody's ever good enough for that guy. And so he was very criticized, even that I thought he was the nicest guy. And sometimes a job can be tough at a highly selective school.
For sure.
You know, there are a lot of times people leave those positions because you're giving out, more bad news than good news, even that you love the kids. And I'm sure this happens to you, Hillary, where it just breaks your heart that you can't take a kid that you want to take. It's hard, isn't it? You get attached.
Yeah, it does. The first deny that I had to do, I felt sick to my stomach and thought, like, how am I going to do this as a job if I've denied one kid and I feel like I need to lean over the trash can and throw up. But then, last year I had a couple of students who I knew we couldn't take at CC, and man, did I want them, and they were outstanding, and I'm sure that they ended up somewhere awesome, right? But like, I wanted them to be here, and we couldn't take them. And so those are really hard moments. One of the things I appreciate with counselors is when they gently set me right. There are schools that it's hard to know
Their
what the
curriculum?
rigor is like. Yeah. And like, is an advanced class higher and harder and more rigorous than an honors class, or is it the other way around? And it can sometimes be hard to tell that from a school profile. And so occasionally I will get I'll have a conversation with a counselor, or I'll get a call from a counselor where they say, hey, like, I think you mixed up these two kids. And I think that maybe you meant to defer this one and deny that one, not the other way around. And then we end up having a conversation about their curriculum. And it's so nice when they can give me the benefit of the doubt and allow it to be a teachable moment, because some of those curriculums are really hard to understand. The other thing that can be hard is when counselors question our policies, not an individual student, but a policy. Like, for example, our test optional policy. And I mean, this summer I was working with a couple of other people on the college side to give like a seminar on test optional admissions just to counselors. And there were a few counselors who were super aggressive in the way that they were questioning us about, why aren't you just test blind? And why can't you see that this is the best thing for the student? And that's another place where, like, lots of times they don't see the whole pool. I see the rural students who don't have a lot of rigor in their schedule, but are able to go and get a 1500 on the SAT. And that tells me, like, wow, that kid is really bright if they're coming from rural America and they, don't have a ton of rigor available to them, but they can perform in that way on an exam. That tells me that that student is capable of doing the work at our school. And so sometimes, like, you have to be able to see that nuance from our side. And so it's hard when you feel like the counselor on the other side doesn't necessarily trust you, and instead of asking questions, they sort of accuse you of doing the wrong thing. So that's why I would say, like, just believe that we have, like, your students' best interests at heart, and just sort of give us the benefit of the doubt, and let's have conversations.
Love it, love it, love it. It's just really great stuff. Parents, you already given some good parent advice. Let the student initiate. Let the student be initiator. Any other tidbit of wisdom you can?
Yeah, I don't know if
us?
I may have learned this from you, Mark. I'm not sure where I learned it, but like, this is your opportunity to practice your skills as an assistant, right? Like, be the administrative assistant for your student. Teach them how to use an Excel spreadsheet. Teach them how to write a professional sounding email. Help them learn how to manage a project, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to be doing right now, not telling them where to go, not telling them where they can or cannot get in, but like, help them learn skills from this journey that they wouldn't have the opportunity to learn elsewhere. And it's going to come in so handy when they get to college and they need to, like, we want our students to be able to talk to professors, right? And so let them practice that by talking to admission counselors, and let them practice learning how to get a project done by understanding project management skills now before they're out of your house.
Love it. And last group, students.
Yeah. I would love to see students interact with current college students to get to know what the colleges are like, right? So, like, we print on the back of the like info session piece that we hand out to students, the back of a folder, we print like 6 or 7 questions that are good questions to ask CC students who are either their tour guide or who they run into on campus. And they're really good questions. Why did you choose CC? How did you pick your major? What's your favorite memory from being here? What surprised you about going to this college? And having those interactions with current students is going to give you so much insight into what a college is like. And I don't think that this is unique to CC. I think this is true a lot of places. College students will be honest with you. They are transparent. They want you to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about their college, right? And so
that's definitely true everywhere.
Yeah, having those conversations with students when you're visiting colleges, or where an admission counselor like me can hook you up with a current student and give you the opportunity to chat with them. Lots of schools have you can just click right through on their website to email a current student. You should take advantage of those opportunities.
This is so good. I so appreciate you, Hillary. Thank you so much for doing this. I have to close with a quick story. So I reached out to Hillary. I got this invite to do a counselor flying program to the Colorado colleges. And I'm like, Hillary, I'm coming to see you. I'm coming to Colorado College. I don't know how I got it, but I got this invitation. She's like, who do you think put you on the list?
Well, you're such a good match for us. And it's been so nice to be able to hear about CC through your lens. So yeah, I'm really glad that you were able to come and visit.
You know
I'm sorry that I wasn't here. I can't believe we still haven't met in person. That's ridiculous.
But I'm back next summer. I'll be back next summer. So, we'll get there. And I'll follow up with you. I have 2 students in their freshman class. So we'll have a conversation and I'll give you some feedback. But why don't you share the CC website and any social media that you think would be a good place for people to go to learn more?
Yeah. Okay. So it's coloradocollege.edu. If you want to go to the admission, it's coloradocollege.edu/admission, singular. The best way to find what you're looking for on the CC website is to use the search bar. If you're on a normal computer, not on a mobile device, there's a search bar up in the top right-hand corner where you can just type in what you're looking for. And that is, our website is a little bit hard to navigate, I think. So that's the easiest way to find what you're looking for. And then social media, we are very active on Instagram. There's I think it's CC Admission is the handle, but you can look us up there. And we try to repost from all of the different Instagram accounts that CC has. We have everything from like CC Music to the main CC one, CC Athletics, the Italian program, the Spanish program. Like everybody has their own account, and we try to repost as much of that as we can so that you can really get a feel for what's going on campus. And I follow it, and I learn something like every day from the CC admission.
That's what we need to do.
And I'm on the comms team, so like I see it before it comes out, and I still miss some stuff and don't see it until right when it's posted. So that's a really good place to learn about CC.
You sold me. And I have to say, you guys have an awesome admission office. You've got you there, Karen, who we've had on the podcast before, Matt, who's awesome. I don't know Mark, but Susan and Mark go back to Bates College days in the 80s. And Susan is always singing Mark's praises. So you have a fantastic
I think one of the cool
admissions team.
We do. I think one of the cool things about Mark is that he has 2 daughters who are CC students right now, and they were admitted to lots of different small liberal arts colleges across the country, and they both chose to stay in Colorado Springs and to stay at CC, and they've both been super successful. They love it there. The younger one works in the admission office. It's so fun to get to see her. So when your VP has 2 kids at CC who are happy there, I think that speaks volumes about the school.
And even Matt's an alum who came back, you know, right? And so,
Matt's been there since he graduated. Our admission office is really fantastic, and the people in it are thoughtful, caring, mature adults who really have students' best interests in mind when they're building a class.
Well, Hillary, thank you so much. And, I'll be in touch.
For sure. Thanks so much, Mark, for having me on. It's been great to talk with you.
I've loved it. Thanks. On Thursday's episode, Dave is my co-pilot, and we are discussing 7 higher education trends to watch in 2023 by Jeremy Bauer of Higher Ed Drive. A question from a listener comes from Laura from Maryland, and she wants to know, why does the Common Data Set only report the English and math sections of the ACT and not the reading and science sections? And we have a brand new interview, one I've wanted to bring you for a few years. Dr. Kelly Holloway of Mercer University on Understanding Mercer. It'll be a 3-parter over the next 3 weeks. And our college spotlight, I'm continuing my series going through the 9 schools I visited on my trip to California in December. And we're looking at one of the great liberal arts and science schools in the country, Claremont McKenna. Friends, I close you with something you've heard from me over and over and over again if you listen to this podcast, and that college is a match to be made It is not a prize to be won. You can say it the reverse way. College is not a prize to be won. It is a match to be made. You can say it in the affirmative way. College is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. Say it however you want to, but the bottom line is it's not about collecting trophies. It's not about bumper stickers. It's not about sweatshirts. It's not about bragging rights. It is about finding the right environment for your student to thrive and reach their full potential. See you on Thursday, everybody. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 14. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel, and to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stelianos Dimitriou. If you want to have a coaching session with Lisa or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Thursday.